Hi there. My name is Jennifer Hansen, and I am the Director of Marketing here at Gulo. And today we are talking about Core Web Vitals. So we're glad that you joined us. We have a lot of information to cover here, and we're going to be flying through this information. So if you have questions, there's a Q&A section here and on the webinar. Please feel free to ask your questions there, and we'll get to them either as the presentation goes along or at the end. So we're here with Zach Wilson. Hello, Zach.
Hello.
And yeah, if you would like to, there we go. So here at Gulo, we are web design experts. And what we do is we've been doing this for 18 years. We help clients with web strategy, planning out their website development, all of their user experience and content marketing, SEO, all of that good stuff related to your web design. And so because we've been doing this for such a long time, we have a lot of insights to share. And this particular topic is sort of a hot topic in web design circles, where a lot of people are talking about Core Web Vitals. And so Zach and I have been talking about it a lot. And so what we wanted to do is kind of distill out some of the best, most important information that you guys need to know so that you understand it a little bit better about what it means and why it's important. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Zach, and you can take it away.
Yeah, well, thanks everyone again for coming. Again, today is on Core Web Vitals, and this is a pretty technical topic, and we're gonna, like Jen said, we're gonna try and distill it down as much as possible, give some action items, what it is, what outcomes can be achieved, and why we should be really paying attention to this. So what is it? This is not actually a colloquial CWV. I kind of do this just because it's a mouthful, but Core Web Vitals is a specific set of metrics Google considers to be important for users on a web page. Wow, that doesn't really mean anything. Well, more specifically, it's a methodology that Google came up with to allow them to quantitatively measure the user experience on a web page. Okay, drilling down. More madness. This is a glimpse at what Google exposes to a lot of people that really care about this. It's a calculator to tell us more about Web Vitals. And it's just, wow, this is just a lot of stuff. And so what are we going to do today? We're going to talk about this, try and talk about this and distill this down and get into the specifics of what it is, what it actually pertains to on your page. And I'm using that term very literally, not page, not site, but page. And it really is how your page loads, how it becomes interactive. And this is to the user, and then the visual stability of that page. So we'll break those down a little bit more, but load, we've got all these devices in the world. We're loading them from anywhere from, hopefully, nobody has the curse of ever being on 3G ever again, but it's still out there. So loading not from 3G all the way up to 5G, and you're lucky if you have 5G because it's amazing. And then the speed at which you can see the information, interact with that information, scroll up, scroll down, scroll left, scroll right, interact, and then interact with that on a sort of stable level. And instability pertains to you don't have an ad blocker, you should get one. But if you don't have an ad blocker, every web page you go to probably is littered with ads, and a lot of those ads are not done well. So they'll a page will load, and then all of a sudden content will shift to the left, shift to the right, shift up, down, up, etc. And that's called visual instability. So this is the meat and potatoes of Core Web Vitals. Again, the sort of loading, interactivity, visual stability. These are nestled into something that Google calls a page experience. signal. And if you're familiar with SEO, search engine optimization, signals, Google has a few hundred signals. This is one signal that that they're giving us a lens into, and Core Web Vitals is a subset of that signal. Maybe a couple of years ago, you might have remembered everybody was flipping out about HTTPS, mobile friend. Before that, it was mobile friendly. Now it's Core Web Vitals. These things, when Google talks, people listen. They've been talking about Core Web Vitals for actually probably about 5 or 6 years in different language, different branding, but now it's actually called Core Web Vitals, and it's again about user experience. So why is this different than 5 years ago? We've been talking about this user experience. Google says, you know, make a web page and focus on your user experience. What is that user experience? It's the content you're presenting for your audience. It's again the visual elements for that audience, aesthetic and just appearance, visual stability, and then again the rate or speed which your audience can consume that. Everybody knows the most probably trite piece of data on the internet is slow page loads result in abandonment, bounces, etc. So this is part of that metric. So why is this different? Well, Google's been talking about it a really long time. They're providing us a ton of information, tools, reports. Um, they literally have an entire developer FAQ in their developer portal about all of this stuff and the details of it. There's a ton of information. So that's a signal to us that 90% of people that use Google on the planet that we should pay attention. Well, what is number one or number 99? What does that actually mean? Well, Core Web Vitals, as it sits today and the data we have, if you make this absolutely perfect on your website, will you jump to number one? No. If it's absolutely abysmal on your website, will you fall to 99? No. But if you do improve it and you do help the performance, there are indicators, again, all of these tools and reports, that there will likely be a correlation between your Web Vital score and the ability to move up in search engine position. So does that mean we should all freak out and go hire an agency to fix your website? No, not necessarily. But you should start thinking about this, paying attention to it, and being aware of the just the language that's being used, and where we are in the actual timeline of things. And they started talking about this, like I said, 5 years ago. And they say by the end of this month, all of the quote unquote algorithm changes and signals will be out in the ecosystem, aggregating data by the end of this month, August 2021. So why do we care? Well, that's a good question. Google, number one, we care because Google is, again, almost 90% of the search volume in the world. That's pretty significant. So again, when they talk, we should listen. And historically, everything they talk about is in this black box, and we don't really get a clear lens of what is behind there. There's again like 190 other signals that they talk about, especially for search engine position, things like title tags, meta tags, image tags, et cetera, et cetera. But there's H1 tags, but there's a ton of literature, a ton of research, but Google stays pretty tight-lipped about all of that stuff. Like they have some very opaque at best documentation on their site to say, best practices, but they don't really tell us how that actually affects your positioning. And if you do this, you're going to be positioned like it's a black box. Data in, stuff happens, data out. That's it. We don't know what is behind the curtain. So um, this is different because, again, they're providing us a lot of tools. So a lot of tools and a lot of information, and telling us very specific, again, quantitatively, ways to make these changes. So we should listen. So just quick, this is kind of a flyover slide because none of this really will mean anything right now, but it's sort of a dictionary of what things are. Again, page experience is the overarching signal that they talk about. Page experience includes core web vitals, mobile usability, HTTPS, and security issues. Core web vitals is a subset of page experience and includes A through F, and we'll talk about that more. So this is the waterfall of a core web vital. Just to give you some visual, this is when Google crawls your site, and it's running through this sort of cadence in terms of how it measures specifically core web vitals. So this first screen, and this is, we're talking milliseconds, anywhere from a few milliseconds to a few hundred milliseconds. Millisecond is 500 milliseconds to half a second, and all the way to the end. Once you're hopefully not fortunate enough to get a pop-up, but this site has a pop-up on it. So what are these things in between? It's everything. Time to first byte. I push click on a URL, sends a request to the server sends something back. That's blank screen. That's a few hundred milliseconds. First contentful paint is the first thing that, in your eyes can barely even recognize this, the first thing that appears on a screen. And then further down the road, the second to last one is largest contentful paint, which is once the page is effectively completely done rendering. The stuff in between is like time to interactive. Like sometimes you can start scrolling a through a site or interacting even though all of the content hasn't completely loaded. So so how does this all pertain to your site? Well, we're going to try and whittle this down into each one of those frames and just give you some examples and then some ideas of how to actually do some actionable things to your site. All of these will not be actionable. Some of them are, need to go to a development team. Some of them need to go to a design team. But so first, start small. You've got a website. Presumably everybody on this call has a website, and you have n number of pages, whether it's 20 pages or 5,000 pages. Well, take that website and break it into chunks. So types. So you've got your homepage, which is a unique page experience. You've service or product page, unique page experience, your about page, your contact page, your blog post page. Those are all roughly like going to be performed the same within core web vitals. One blog post to another blog post, generally speaking, is going to perform the same, unless the difference might be like blog post A might have 50 images and blog post B might have one image. But if blog post A and 50 images are done correctly, it won't actually matter. So number one, start small. Number two, take one of those pages and run it through any one of these tests. They're all the same. These are URLs. When you get the deck, you can just click on these. They'll be accessible. And this provides you, the more familiar term is probably Google page speed or Google Insights. And it will produce a report. It will do some stuff, produce a report. And if you're really, really lucky, you will see this and you're done. So in your decision tree, go and celebrate and have a martini because it's no work to do. Uh, Probably not going to be the case. More the when they first released this, the data was that roughly about 2% of sites look like this, and the other 98% look like this, are in the red and underperforming according to Google. So um, again, you'll more likely see this. We're going to focus for this talk just on the bucket of performance. That's where all the core Web Vital information is. And just as an aside, the heading on this is called lab test. A lab test is every time you run a page test from your browser using Page Insights or Lighthouse, uh, that's a lab test. And every time you run a lab test, as in this performance screenshot here, you may encounter different results. It's, it's the lab, the scientific lab. And in that lab, there's all of these environmental variables that could affect your, the actual performance. So it's really good to do, but if you're one day, if you're getting a 25 and the next day you're getting, a 90, you probably want to look at the average of that, and there's still probably some work to be done. So the other one is called field test. This is something you can access in Google Search Console. Google Search Console gives you a report of Core Web Vitals. The report each day is a 28-day average. So it averages data, all of the data of all the people going to your website over 28 days, and performs on and how each page is performing over that 20-day average. So this is really good, but look at this person. They were in really bad shape, red line, really okay shape. Then clearly they did some work and in great shape. And then something must have changed, and now they're in bad shape again. So there's volatility to this. Again, should you freak out? No. But likely there was probably a release of some sort on this particular site, and it put them from green to red, and somebody needs to go look at that and make these fixes. So digging deeper into the report, again, performance, this is what we see. There's a bunch of stuff on this, all of these acronyms, FCP, LCP, TVT, CLS, whatever. The areas, those are the areas you want to focus on in this bottom right tab of this report. Google lets you filter by each one, so you can work on each one. So for FCP, or first contentful paint, which I just found this out. I was actually listening to a webinar just recently on this, and someone said, "What is that word?" And I thought to myself, I've never heard that word either. And someone said, "Well, I looked it up, and it is not a word. They made it up. So don't use that word outside of the context of this. In fact, you can't even say it." Just FCP, contentful paint. Anyway, so what is first contentful paint? It is a metric, and it's the time from when a page starts loading to when when any part of the page becomes visible. So the first thing on a page becomes visible. And how can we improve this? Well, the really easy problem, which a lot of people do, is they go out and they get discount hosting. I'm not going to say any names, but Fast Cow, GoDaddy, etc. And your website is on discount hosting. Well, more times than not, your website is sitting on a server with 500 other websites, and you're sharing resources with all those people, and you're at the mercy of that server. Well, spend some more money and get out of discount hosting, and you will automatically improve this. Some other low hanging fruit. Everybody loves redirects. You build a new page, or got to redirect someone else. Bitleys and things like that. Avoid redirect chains, which is URL to URB to URC, URLC to URLD, etc. try and just get those down to one hop, because every time a user clicks on one of those and has to go from A to B to C, that takes time. Again, milliseconds, but time is very important in all of this. So, and then lastly, for those people that actually have this level of access or work closely with their agency, if someone installs a plugin to do something, or you install a plugin to do something, think about how important that plugin is to you and what it's actually doing. Plugins are amazing, but plugins can also be a kiss of death. Sliders, slider plugins, ad plugins, social media plugins, etc. You got to be careful, because each one of those things will require more intervention, or more not intervention, more stuff for that page to do, which then slows down the page. So use it with caution.
Excuse me, wait,
The next one was
Zach,
LCP,
Zach,
largest. Yes.
before you continue on, we have a question about FCP. So do you want to tackle that now?
Yeah.
The question is, to address or improve FCP, do you think that we're going to see a trend of less hero and header images on pages and blogs?
So no, not necessarily, because based on how a page is constructed and how a page is designed, you don't necessarily have to have that load first, number one. Number two, which is addressed sort of later, is that that to mitigate some of that, you can use lazy loading and some other more mechanical things to defer the loading of those images to a later point, where you can get all the way to your, if you remember, TTI, time to interactive, where you can actually interact with the page, but every single asset on that page isn't actually loaded. So short answer is no. Longer answer is, if a page is developed right, you can, and well, you can kind of load and put whatever the heck you want on it. If you see a lot of a good example, we don't have a screenshot in this deck, but is a lot of news sites will like load the whole site, and all of a sudden you've got these like silhouette images of stuff all over the page. That's all deferred loading, and they're doing that to basically increase their user experience, or improve their user experience, and increase their sort of core web vital score. So that's a very common example, and not an example that not a use case for a lot of marketing websites, for what it's worth. But if you're getting into like a progressive web app, or a site with a lot of data, again, like news sites, will start to do that, because they're loading so much information from all these other sources. So LCP, yep, LCP is the time you click on the link to the time you see the majority of the content. So a little bit of ambiguity here, but that's just a little bit further upstream from FCP. And again, once you can start to just past where you can start to interact with the page, but where you see the majority of the content on the screen. And this is a big one, because this is really what humans start to like, they get anxious, like I want to start scrolling, I want to click whatever. And some of the low-hanging fruit here are that a site editor can do. You can lazy load images. There's a ton of actual good plugins that can do that for you right out of the box. You can remove unused third-party scripts, and I have a good example here, which is this client, or this site rather, is has all these sort of scripts. This is actually the report from their from Lighthouse, their CWV, and it says reduce unused JavaScript. Well, just go down the list. The first one is a comments JavaScript. It's a CPG, so they're not going to remove that. And then the last one is Google Tag Manager. That super important. Never, ever, ever going to remove that. But the second one, I've got on good authority that they're no longer doing any retargeting campaigns. So um, they shouldn't be using this. This is just wasted overhead. It's wasted kilobytes. It's wasted transaction time, etc. So again, just be aware. It goes back to actually my earlier point with plugins of like, if you're not using stuff on your site, make sure you're removing them, your developers removing them, your agency's removing them, whatever. So Google ads, Instagram, whatever campaigns you're running, retargeting pixels, those type of things. If you're not actively running campaigns, get that stuff off of your site or communicate it to your agency that that campaign has ended or you're not doing that anymore, because all of this stuff again affects your user experience and load times. Another one, a couple of these are compress images, optimize and compress images. So we see this all the time, like oh, why is this page loading so, and support ticket, and someone will go to a support team will go into the page, and they're literally loading like a 10 megabyte picture or something like that. And it's like that, your CMS can do this, but we have to compress images, optimize images, use images that are scaled to the browser. And again, that sort of goes in concert with loading images. But and then lastly, use proper dimensions. So this can sort of if you're uploading a huge image, 10 megabyte image, well, you don't need to load the full res 10 megabyte image on your homepage. Select a smaller version, large, medium, small, thumbnail, whatever, however you're using that. Be cognizant of how you're using that information. So total blocking time, this is honestly just crazy technical and really, really challenging to do. But if you're running a report and your only thing that's showing up is this, or you're getting hit real hard by this, the best thing you can do is reach out to your developer, your web developer, your agency, to ask how they can help you with this, because this requires a lot of testing, a lot of iteration, and a lot of troubleshooting to fix this, and in some cases some bigger, more some enterprise clients and web apps and sites, like like I said, news sites, like this to fix this would be just a massive project. So but it is important because the what this is this if this is done incorrectly, is basically if you're loading things on your site and it's not done well, is it will, if you're loading 5 things, instead of loading those all asynchronously or at different times, the blocking will say, I'm loading 1, I'm waiting for 1 to completely done loading, then I'm loading number 2 and I'm waiting for that to be completely done loading, then number 3, number 4, and number 5, etc. So it calculates the time from 1 to 5, as opposed to if those are done asynchronously, they can be 1 through 5 can all be done at the same time. So this is the fun one. Everybody, not everybody, but well, most people have experienced this in some way, shape, or form. And there's I did a PDF, so that was supposed to be a video, but this is
Yeah, this happens a lot.
I forgot. This is the CLS, and this is the layout shift. This is where the thing I was talking about earlier with content will move, shift up or down, left or right. This example is kind of funny because it asks if you want to order these things, and you say no, go back, and then it actually shifts down, and then you have to hit it again, and then automatically, or you accidentally order 14 things that you don't want to do. So it can have really big implications, negative implications to a user experience. So and this is more of there's no simple fix to this. This is a web developer issue, but it's poor coding. But if you see this on your site, I encourage you to to call it out and get some help to fix it. So where are we at with the how does this actually, how does Google actually see your website? Well, in Google Search Console, it can be really, really bad. This is a good example. In the page experience report, which I said earlier, the page experience report shows in the upper left-hand corner your core web vitals. These guys have a lot of failing URLs. And the takeaway, if you look at this report in Google Search Console, is your site has 3.1% of the URLs with a good page experience. That's not good. This one, by contrast, has, as you can see, 3 green check boxes, only 22 failing URLs. Well, 98.6 of this site's URLs have a good page experience, much better, much less anxiety. So if you run this report and you're in this camp, definitely do something about it. And if this camp, 1.4% away from 100, don't sweat it, you're in good shape. So just to round this all out, where can you find all these reports? A bunch of different places is the answer. In this, there will be links, but in Google Search Console, if you don't have access to that or it's not set up for your site, get it set up. Page speed this is Insights. This is publicly available. Just Google it. Google Page Speed Insights, and Web Dev, which is my favorite because it's easiest to remember and access. It's 6 letters. And then lastly, if you're really interested, here's a scoring calculator where you can play with all of your scores. So that's it. Went a little long, sorry. Are there, I'll just open it up. Are there any questions anyone has in the Q&A?
We answered a couple. We
they
answered a
didn't hit
couple
on?
of questions along the way, so I think
Okay.
we're pretty good. And we had a few people commenting in the chat box. But anybody who's still here, if you have a specific question about anything, now's a great time to ask. But Zach, I think you covered it so well, and it makes perfect sense when you explain it so well. So the comments, everybody said that it seems to be, you just explained everything really clearly. So I think that was great. And we will be sending out the recording and the slides and all those links. So you can click on those links and check on your website. People are asking, how do you get access to Google Search Console?
Yeah. So first,
with one of those links.
Yeah, the link will be on the last page of the site, but you can just Google it. And if you can't access it, you can just type in your URL and it will try and authorize you through either Google Tag Manager or Google Analytics if you have access to those, or if you don't have access to any of those and you have access to the site, you can put a little bit of code on your site and add that there. And if you still can't do any of those things, just shoot us an email and we can help you out.
Fantastic. And one more question came through. Do you use Incognito to run Lighthouse? Google Incognito. And is there a benefit to running tests that way?
So yes and no. If you're running Lighthouse, which I touched on very briefly, but if you're running Lighthouse through Chrome dev tools, yes, run it incognito. If you're running Lighthouse through web.dev, no. And actually, if you're logged in, it will show you a history of all of your reports like this, the performance. So it's nice to be logged in and actually do that, because then you get these nice little graphs of the history of your lab data, but it's not imperative.
Fabulous. That's cool.
Good
Great.
question,
I think we've got to all the questions, so we're all set. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us for this quick 30-minute session. We will follow up with an email in the next day or two with the recording and the slides. And if you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to email us and we'll get back to you. Look forward to seeing you guys next month for our next webinar. Thanks so much, Zach.
Thanks, everyone. Yep. Bye-bye.